You're listening to Super Power Up with multidimensional master, superpower expert, and former counterintelligence agent, Tonya Dawn Recla. If you're ready to disrupt reality, then sit down, strap in, and prepare to experience the show that proves there is no spoon.
Hello, everyone. This is Tonya Dawn Recla, your superpower expert. And today's episode is all about how we can use the body as an energy conduit. Last week, I talked with Ilana Bissonnette about bending and shaping reality. Fascinating how she's chosen to go about her journey and what's led her down the path that she's been on. But that conversation got me thinking about, do we really know what we're capable of? And we talk a lot about the mind, right? If any of you saw that movie, Lucy, it was all about how much of our mind capacity are we using? And it was pretty small, right, percentage. But what do we really know about the functionality of our bodies? And we're fascinated with it, right? We're fascinated with those who excel at extreme sports or anything extreme that stretches the bounds of what we thought our bodies were capable of. Well, of course, this comes up in the superpower conversation. And while a lot of times we're talking about things like intuition and mind reading and psychic ability and all of that good stuff, and it seems very kind of intangible, difficult to kind of wrap our arms around, or not demonstrable in a way that we can really see and believe in beyond, the proof, I guess, is not quite there for everybody because they can't yet see energy moving, right? Or they can't sense it. And so it seems like nothing's going on. Well, it brings up a lot of fascinating dialogues about if we know beyond a shadow of a doubt that this concept of like Newtonian physics, right? The solidity of things has been debunked, and we believe that. And we know that the solidness of our bodies is really deceptive because everything's in motion and it's just energy moving around. Well, then it's kind of like that quote in Doctor Strange where it's like, what if I told you that the body can be convinced to realign itself in all sorts of ways, right? Well, is that true? And it starts to kind of like the mind starts to rattle around and we get a little bit like, well, but this is called disrupt reality, folks. So this shouldn't be a shock to you. Anyway, so when we think about the body, I contend that it's as complex, if not more so, than all of this like diving into the mind and trying to understand the mind and consciousness and all this other stuff. I think we've only like really started in at the tip of that iceberg on what the body's capable of. And many of you work in those spaces. We talk to you all the time, and you're pushing the bounds of what we understand and how we understand things about the body. And kudos to you all. Big respect for those of you truly discovering what we're capable of and kind of challenging those concepts. So that's what we're going to dive into here more deeply. And again, as always, make sure you're going to our site, superpowerexperts.com. You can download the app too. Go to where you get your apps from and type in SuperpowerNet, or you can type in Superpower Experts and it'll come up. And you can stream your favorite shows. Podcast episode a day attunes you folks to your higher frequency. Easy peasy. That's just one episode a day. Listen in and give yourself a nice balance to what we're typically being bombarded with from the world through social media, mass media, and everything else. We're kind of here to soften the edges a bit. And so give yourself that time each day to just relax in and remind yourself that there absolutely is more. You are more, and you deserve to have those experiences. So stay with us. We're going to come right back from the break and continue our conversation on the body as an energy conduit. Hello, everyone. This is Tonya Dawn Recla, Executive Director of Superpower Experts, and we want to thank each of you for making Superpower Up the #1 podcast network for personal development and spiritual growth. Because people like you have the courage to say that mindfulness, healthy living, disrupting reality, the pursuit of consciousness, responsible entrepreneurship, and radical parenting matter, we now amass over 1 million downloads monthly in more than 90 countries. Our numbers keep growing because there are far more people willing to live divergently than mass media wants to acknowledge. For you, the change makers, the light bearers, the way showers, we say thank you. If you're ready to take the next step in your evolution, go now to superpowerexperts.com and take the superpower quiz. And as Neva Lee Recla, our youngest podcaster, likes to remind us, remember, we all have superpowers and we can change the world. Awesome. We're back. So you're listening to Tonya Dawn Recla as Disrupt Reality. And I'm kind of expanding on the conversation we had last week about bending and shaping reality and talking about using the body as an energy conduit. So what do we mean by that, right? Well, we have all these sensory perceptors in our body, and they're designed to allow us to receive information from the outside world, to send information out to the outside world. And we operate with the concept of the projection and this broadcasting mechanism where we are projecting out, and then what we receive back is in alignment with what we've projected out. And most people are very unaware that this process occurs. And part of that is because we do know so little about our own bodies, and we don't explore them, and we aren't necessarily taught to connect into them and to pay attention to them, short of looking for symptoms to ailments, right? We've mastered that, right? Do you feel this way and this way? You might have this, right? Like that's the mentality, is like we're on hyper alert for any symbols that something might be wrong. But beyond that, we don't typically give our bodies a whole lot of credit unless your work or your profession or your hobbies or your influences happen to be in a body space, like, such as athletics or trail riding or what. I mean, that would qualify as athletics, I guess, but you know what I mean, something having to do with the body, physical therapy, where your attention is drawn to that a lot. Most of us spend the majority of our time in our heads, and we don't think much about the body. So if we don't think much about the body, then how could we possibly be paying attention to what our body may be broadcasting or receiving? And instead, all we can do is use the framework that we were programmed with, whatever that might be, through society, parents, marketing messages. It doesn't really matter. It all influences. That's all we can really lean into, because the idea of us being able to trust ourselves enough to interpret our bodies or to intentionally emit signals out from the body is really far out there for a lot of folks, because most folks don't even know how they breathe, right? I mean, breath work, that seems like it should not be a real big deal and we should just kind of get it. And yet it's a huge field of discovery. Well, why are we discovering so much through breath work? Because most of us just do it and we don't think too much about it. And so it's something that happens involuntarily, they say, or at least subconsciously. And we don't really understand the power of it and what it indicates. And so the breath is a great kind of place to start in just, right? It makes a huge difference if we follow that breath down into the belly and breathe out. And it's a great, easy peasy kind of thing you can do in any moment if you start feeling like tight, right, in your chest or just a little bit constricted. In fact, this was a technique that we taught to counterintel agents, Justin and I, at the school that we taught at. And we taught counterintel agents to feel the inside of their feet. And what we mean by that is that intel's kind of a stressful gig. And so if you're sitting there trying to gather intelligence, either deceptively or not deceptively or whatever, it doesn't really matter. Like, it's kind of a heady experience. And so a lot of times what we'd find is that the agents would be kind of up in their head and be like, and it'd be difficult for them to really focus in and receive and stay in full awareness. And so when you drop down out of your headspace and can get like in your, first, second, third, the second, third, and fourth chakras, we call the power center. So it encompasses the heart and your midsection, everything. If you kind of center into that space, one, you can receive information much more clearly, but you also transmit information much more clearly. It's a connector. And so that's a weird concept to be teaching at a military installation. And so instead, we didn't really talk about all of that, but we were able to discuss how if you just feel the inside of your feet, then your energy body does drop down, and you can do it in conversation with people. And if you are more centered in your body, right, you receive much more intentionally and broadcast much more intentionally. Now, why is that necessary? When we broadcast out, that dictates what we see in return, right? Truly, like with Plato's allegory of the cave, as we're broadcasting out, we're telling the universe what we expect to see. And this again turns the whole idea of like seeing is believing on its head to believing is seeing. And we don't think that's what's going on. We think that we're responding to what's happening outside of us. It's quite the opposite, which is weird, right? I get it. Like it's like all of a sudden your cause and effect get reversed. And it takes some practice to make that switch, because that's not how most of us go through the first part of our existence here, right? It's quite backwards. And so when we can make that switch and go, okay, let's just pretend that Tonya's not completely crazy and she didn't drink some Kool-Aid along the line. And there's this like, we think, okay, if I'm projecting out, that means I'm transmitting some sort of signal, some sort of information, both with the words that I'm saying, how I'm using my body, and these energetic signals out. Then on some level, that should mean that if I want to change something out there, I have to first look at where it's being projected from in here, right? These are not new concepts. But on top of all of that, once that process of discovery has been tackled and explored and mastered, then you have to go to this idea of like, okay, well, how do we harness more and more and more energy? Because as I've talked about in the abstract frequency, it's actually a series of frequencies. And at every shift, you have to be able to make a bigger container and resource it very differently, which means that if you don't understand how your body assists you in conducting energy and acting as that conduit, then at some point you're going to hit tilt. And you're not going to be able to go much further until you're willing to explore some things that seem even more out there, right? Than how you may currently be seeing your reality. Which is why, in our superpower programs, we use a course called Redesign Your Reality. That's the series, and in that first part of that is the Master Your Personal Power course. Because again, if you don't have total agency over every aspect of your beingness, then you can't commune completely with divine, because you can't make that commitment, because you don't know what all of these little aspects of you that have been running amok your whole life, and you have no management of them. You can't speak on their behalf because you don't manage them well right now. So you don't know what they're going to do. You may really, 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 really want to commit to changing the world and having an impact, but you have to be able to get in there and do that work first before you stand a chance. And part of that work is understanding how the body acts as that energy conduit. So yes, these are very complex. This is not a simple 1, 2, 3, and then your life's perfect. No, our goal is not to simplify the complexity for you folks. It's to give you the tools to navigate the complexity, but you have to be willing to upgrade your operating system, right? We're talking about how you operate your operating system, and be willing to play with all these different softwares, if you will, in order to do that, right? And if the superpowers kind of motif appeals to you, then come join us. Check out the programs at superpowerexperts.com. And just listen to the podcast, listen to this show, listen to the other shows. Just keep consuming something that's encouraging you to look beyond where you may have been looking. All right. So do yourself a favor today. Start paying today and the rest of the week. Pay attention to your body. Just pay attention to it. You can talk to it. I know it's weird. Don't get frustrated if you don't hear it right away. You've spent your whole life not talking to it. So don't expect it to pipe in right away. But there will come a point where it's speaking so loudly to you that you can't ever remember not hearing it. Okay. But this is a practice. It is a work. It is a discipline. And you really, truly have to want what lies on the other side of it badly enough to persevere through some of this work. Super exciting. And I believe in you, and I know you can do it. And if you want support and love on that journey, reach out to us. Otherwise, until next time, folks, go out uncover your superpowers and change the world. Take care, everyone.
Are you ready to discover your superpowers? Go now to superpowerexperts.com and take the superpower quiz today.